Good afternoon. Today we are looking at packet number 4. So for packet number 4, our first page says Judy listed a fifth number with the set of data 3, 6, 7, and 10. The number she included made the mean of the 5 numbers equal to their median. What number could Judy have included with the data? Well, I've already found several different answers that work. So there's not just one answer that works. So if you get one answer and you see a friend got a different answer, they might both work. So we need to make sure that we're looking at our median and our mean. So remember, to find the mean, you add all numbers up and divide by how many numbers. So we're going to divide, she has 4 numbers and she adds a fifth, we're going to divide by 5. That's going to get us our mean. The median is the middle number. So when you write your numbers out, that middle number needs to equal the same as what the mean is. So she has 3, 6, 7, and 10, and let's say you add a 12 onto there, the median is 7. So your mean would have to equal 7. If you add them all up and divide by 5, it would have to equal 7. So you're going to have to do some guessing and checking on this one, making sure that when you add a number, whichever number you add to, if you add it on the right-hand side, 7 is going to be in the middle. If you add it on the left, then 6 is going to be in the middle. So make sure your median equals that median. So make sure your mean equals the median. So that one's going to take a little bit of guessing and checking on your part. Our next page, on a recent airline flight, there was 1 empty seat for every 3 passengers. So we have 1 empty seat for each section that's filled with passengers. 1 empty, 3 full for our passengers. So that is our pattern. 1 empty, 3 full. 1 empty, 3 full. So if we look at that, we're skip counting by 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a pattern of 4s. So if we know there's 132 seats total, we want to take out all of the empty seats. So we're going to have to do some math here to divide out some seats. So we need to know how many seats are going to be those empty seats. So my big hint to you is knowing that it is a pattern of skip counting by 4, and see if you can come up with a logical answer of how many passengers were on the flight. So if you find out how many of the empty seats there are, you're going to want to tweak that away from how many total seats that there are on the flight. Five-card challenge. Remember, we want to equal 3. So 3 is the number that all of our equations should equal. I've been seeing some very creative equations that people are putting. I'm very impressed with how we're doing that. Keep challenging yourself to try to find one that uses all 5 cards. We need to have 15 points, but I love seeing people challenging themselves to getting a lot more than 15. Our next page is our pattern page. So pre-algebra needs to complete the table through figure number 7. So we need to have all the top of the table filled in. So let's look at that. Our first figure, there's 1 blue, no greens or reds, so there's 1 total block. Our second figure, we have that 1 blue, we have 5 green, no red, to give us a total of 6. Our third figure, we had 1 blue, 5 green, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 red, to give us a total of 15 blocks. And then our fourth figure, we had that 1 blue. Now we're going to add 13 more blues. Don't forget that 1 blue that was already there. So that gives us 14 blues plus our 5 reds and our 5 greens and our 9 reds to give us a total of 28. So now we can think, what patterns do we know? What can we fill in without even trying to put any more blocks onto our figure? I know that for 3 figures in a row, I had 1 blue. So now I'm at 14, so I know the next 3 figures are going to be 14 blue. I'm at my 3 for red, so I'm not sure how many green they're going to be, but I only have 2. I'm at my 5 for green. Keep calling it red because I'm using a red marker. So now look at my red. I only have 2 reds. I need that 3rd red one. So what I'm going to focus on here is I'm going to look to see what my pattern is. If I can figure out my total blocks pattern, I can fill in all the rest of them. There are 2 different patterns that I see just off the top of my head with my blocks. So first, let's look at how we're increasing, going from one figure to the next figure. I went from 1 to 6. That was adding 5. Then I went from 6 to 15. That was adding 9. Then going from 15 to 28, I added 13. So can I see a pattern of how many I'm going to add for my next figure? So if you can figure that out, you can fill in all of those total blocks. Another pattern I noticed was going from figure 1 to my total blocks. 1 to 1 is multiplying by 1. To go from figure 2 to 6 blocks, I multiplied by 3. To go from figure 3 to 15 blocks, I multiplied by 5. And to go from figure 4 to 28 blocks, I multiplied by 7. So based on that, if I multiply by 1, 3, 5, 7, I should be able to figure out what to multiply my 5th figure by to find the total number of blocks. If I know my total number of blocks, and I know 2 of my other colors, I can subtract these 2 colors out of my total number, and I will be left with the color that's remaining. And then you follow the same patterns that we've been following to fill in the rest of our blocks. So if you can figure out this green, then you'll know the next. So 3 greens in a row will have the same number. So follow those patterns to complete that box. Our next page is our geometry pages we've got coming up. So here we have a right rectangular pyramid. So the first thing we have to do is draw a net. So we have to pretend like we're cutting down the sides of this pyramid so we can lay it flat. I know it has a square base, and then each of those 4 sides are triangles. And because it's a square, I know that they're all the same size. Next thing I have to do is label my side. Well, each side of my square is 8 feet. And I know my height of a triangle is 16 feet. So now my last thing I have to do is my surface area. So to find the area of my square or rectangle, it's length times width. So the area of my, let's use a different color. The area of my square is going to be the length times the width. So 8 times 8 will give me this area. Then my area of a triangle is 1/2 of my base times my height. Remember, the base is the bottom of the triangle and the height is going up the middle. So my area of my triangle equals 1/2 of 8 times 16. That will give me the area of one triangle. I have 4 triangles. So if I add up all 4 triangle areas plus my square area, that will give me my surface area. That is that geometry page. Now let's look at our next geometry page. So it says now we need to know the formula for the volume of that right rectangular prism. So the volume equals the length times, let me turn my page, equals the length times the width times the height. But because it's a pyramid, that triangle shape, we're going to divide it by 3. Because those triangles, we're taking out those 3 sides out for that pyramid. So we're going to do length times width times height divided by 3. If we just did length times width times height, that would be a rectangular prism. We want the pyramid that's taken out of that rectangular prism. So my calculations that I would do is my length times my width times my height. So length times width times the height divided by 3, and that gives me the volume for my figure. Now for pre-algebra, we need to find how many faces, how many edges, and how many vertices. So our face is the sides of our shape. Our edges are the lines, and our vertices are all of the corners. So note that the height of the pyramid is not an edge. That's just going from the middle up to the top. So that's not an actual edge. So don't count the height in those edges. So make sure that you have your 3 numbers on the line down here for the face, the edge, and the vertices. All right, so that's it for the geometry page. Oh, nope, we have another geometry page. Yay, now we're adding in circles. Whew. So this is a new one for us. So it says find the perimeter and area of the circle. The figure contains a semicircle atop a rectangle. Do not include the dotted line in your perimeter. That's just to help us with our shapes and doing our measuring. So we're going to round our answers to the nearest hundredth. All work must be shown. So for the perimeter of our rectangle, we know to add all 3 of those sides. What we haven't done yet is the perimeter of this half circle. So the perimeter of a circle is also called the circumference. So the circumference of a circle, is that outside of your circle. So the formula for the circumference of a circle is 2 times pi times r. So pi equals 3.14. So you can use, and the number goes on and on and on and on. But we round it to the hundredth, so we can say 3.14. Or on your calculator, you could use the little pi button, and I can show us in class how to use that at a later time. So you can just multiply that 3.14 when we have pi in there. The other thing, so that's pi, so now we have the r. R equals the radius. The radius of a circle is from the center to the side. So it's not the full way. If we went from end to end and across, that would be the diameter. So diameter goes all the way across. The radius only goes from the middle across. So here, they gave us a diameter of 14 millimeters. That went from one end to the other end. We need to know what the radius would be from the middle to the end. So we want half of the diameter. A radius equals half of the diameter. So figure out what measurement that would be going from halfway from the center to the end. So you're going to plug that in. So that would be 2 times 3.14 times your radius. So half of 14 is 7. Now, another thing for you to keep in mind is that this is a semicircle. It's a half of a circle. So we don't have the rest of the circle that we want to add into that circumference. So we want to then divide that answer. So whatever that answer gets us, we want to divide that by 2 because it's half of a circle. So that will get us our perimeter. Now we want to work on the area. So we know how to do the area of a rectangle is length times width. So that length times the width will get you the area of the rectangle. Now we need the area of that circle. So to find an area of a circle, that is pi r squared. So that would be that 3.14 times our radius squared. Keep in mind that it is half of a circle. It's a semicircle. So our area, what are we going to have to do to that to get the area of the semicircle, of a half circle? Then you're going to add both of your areas together to get the area of the full figure. So the biggest thing here was knowing the formulas for the circumference and for the area of our circle, working with that pi, 3.14, working with your radius, which is halfway from the middle of the circle to the end. All right, well, let's look at our next page. Okay, next page is going to be more work with Pascal's triangle. Let me see if I can get it up a little bit more. All right, so let's look at the directions. On the left side of each row, you're going to write the number of the row. Remember, the very top row is labeled 0. So our next row would be 1, then row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So you have to label your rows on the left. On the right side, you're going to write the sum of its elements. So in our row 0, there's just one number, 1. In row 1, we have 1 plus 1, which gives me 2. So in our row 2, we want to add each of those numbers, 1 plus 2 plus 1, to get 4. You are going to fill that in going down the triangle. So that's your first step. Then we have these questions to answer. What relationship exists between the sum of any row and the sum of the row before it? So as you're filling this in, you're looking at your sums of each row and compare it to the one before it. And what do you notice? What patterns do you see? Number 2, following this pattern, what is the sum of row number 11? So if we were to go one more, what would it be? Number 3 is what is the relationship between the row number, so our row number, and the sum. So look at that row number, look at the sum. What are we doing each time? Look at the row number, how are we getting it to that sum? Following that pattern, see if you can find the sum of row 16. So when we're doing these kind of logic problems, we want to be finding those patterns and the rules that we can follow to find the bigger numbers for future rows. So see if you can fill in those patterns to find those answers. Our next page is our polynomials. So find out how they all fit into that shape. Then we're on to our logic page, our last page. So read through what they tell us and you're going to mark it on the table. So the thing to keep in mind for this page is what they tell us isn't exactly the words that are used in the table, and we have to figure out what they're talking about. So we have to determine what subject each of the authors likes to brag about. So Larry does not write for either making movies or sightseeing friends. We have to figure out what subject making movies would be. Well, movies have to do with the theater, which is another word for cinema. And sightseeing friends, well, if they're sightseeing, they're traveling. So Larry doesn't like to make movies or to travel. So you're just going to have to figure out what their topic is talking about, what their title, which topic they're talking about. So once you figure that out, you can fill in your X's to find out what each person likes to blog about. That is it for our packet number 4. If you have any questions on any of these pages, please make sure to come and ask me so we can work through it. I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon.